Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this podcast today. I'm excited to share something with you that I think is close to my heart. It may be a topic that you might be surprised that a mental health professional would focus on, but I think it's one of the most important things we could talk about. Today, I'm going to talk to you about values in parenting, why they're so important, why we need to focus on them right now in our society and some of the downsides of not having them uh, clearly identified and stated and taught to our kids. I want to start out by just telling you a quick experience I had. Literally, just a few minutes before this podcast, I was on the phone with a father who was calling in to get some support and help. He was looking into our services, and he described the situation at home. And he said that he has this boy that is he's about 14 years old. He has been a really a perfect, almost a perfect kid all the way growing up. A really bright student, straight A's, athletic, kind of engaged in life in a really good way, growing and doing well. And almost seemingly overnight, things started to change. He started spending a lot more time in his room, a lot more time online. And before he knew it, he started seeing some changes in behavior. The behaviors that he saw were disrespect. They were ultimately turned into violence, actually, where there's a lot of violence towards the father. And this father was really perplexed by it because he'd been showing him love all along. There was a good relationship between them all along. And then suddenly this change happened. Now, it does correspond with some natural things that are happening inside a young person's life and body where they're becoming an adolescent and the hormones and all of that kick in. But we can't separate what's going on from the society that we live in and what this boy is probably experiencing. We live in a society right now that it almost seems upside down in many, many ways, especially if you have traditional views about what is right, what's wrong, what is, our conscience would tell us to do versus maybe what we see. If you're like me and you're watching television sometimes or things online and you see behaviors that are stunning, like how could someone do what they just did? I think what you're experiencing is you have been taught a set of values. You have a value system, whether that came from your faith traditions, your upbringing, or it came from just the teachings of your parents or something you've learned along the way. You've got standards and expectations that you have for yourself and feel like should be universal in society. And there's a stark difference between maybe those values and what you're seeing in the world. I want to put in a huge plug to all parents out there to identify your core values and decide what you need to do to either espouse them more, meaning teach them both in word and deed to your children, or start to live them. Whatever you need to do with those values, make sure that you are operating from a value place. This is going to be, again, quite a contrast with what I think kids are learning in school in general, with what they're probably learning if they're going to therapy. Because in therapy, really, it's all about how do you feel? And, if you got anxiety, how do we help you not have anxiety? If you think about it, the trend to soften everything, to make everything kind of your choice, and the trend in family life and us parents can easily fall into to kind of smooth the path for our child to make it easier is a little bit like taking the values away. Like let's not have those values stand in the way of you sort of exploring and becoming yourself and figuring out how you want to live your life. I think we've gone too far. I think that we have passed up where that is helpful at this point. There's always got to be that balance between choice, but then the other side is there's got to be accountability. And that accountability comes with a clear set of values and expectations. So if you haven't sat down with your co-parent for a while and said, what is it that we really stand for? What is it that we want to relay to our kids? What are the values we think will bring them happiness in their life? Then please do that. Do that soon, because as I watch kids these days and hear parents call in and look for help, it is as if the values that are being taught are these extreme values of do what you want to do and how do you feel, and go that direction. It's not let your conscience be your guide and let your conscience tell you how to act in a different given situation of what's right and what's wrong. It's almost soft pedaling at all of that and allowing everybody to kind of choose what they want. So we do live in a secular society that has really separated itself from maybe our historical traditions of being founded on God's law, um, and on a higher the belief in a higher power, um, and even to the point of relativism, where it's sort of relative. You know, the values are relative. If you live over here, they could be this way. If you live over here, it could be that way. But I guess I believe very strongly that if you kind of check in deep down and in your daily life, go about your life, you will have little feelings of, oh, I feel a little guilt about that. That's that's your conscience telling you that something different from that would have been better. And that's healthy. It's not it's not wrong and stagnating to actually have these values and this conscience actually be our guide. So you teach your kids how to do that. Do it yourself. We make mistakes and should be able to say, I made a mistake. And the right thing would have been to do this other. Anyway, I'm really feeling strongly about this right now, and I hope this is coming through. I think mental health is tied to this as well. Strong mental health, being able to deal with challenges in our life, come from having some bedrock foundation that we're built on. And that's what I'm proposing today, is that you reinstitute the values you have, put them at the top of the hierarchy of things you want to make sure you pass on and that you live by. And then doing that, I think you're going to see better relationships with your kids. You're going to see them feel more secure in their life because there's something that they're stable on. Not just out drifting in an ocean of conflicting beliefs and ideas. They are something that they believe in and are trying to get to. If we're not teaching those values, I guarantee you other values are being installed in our kids' ideas and conscience and even subconscious. And that we need to take that position. I've heard of kids, and I go back to the story I was telling you at the beginning. The values they're learning online these days are scary. You know, I don't know if I'd suggest it, but it might be a good exercise. You go online somewhere and find a chat room with teenagers and see what they're talking about. See how they're teaching each other to be okay with certain things, or to question certain things, or to how to gain power over their parents. Actually, literally, they in some cases, I've found out that the kids are learning how to manipulate their parents from each other online. So instead of the values of respecting your parents, it's the value of how much can you get away with, or how do you actually be able to control the situation so that you can have unfettered access to your cell phone or your Xbox. And they teach each other that you can up the ante, ratchet up the threats to a point where now parental power or influence, the very thing they need the most at this age in their life, is null and void. And so I again tell you that I think this is one of the major keys that we're leaving out of the discussion right now when it comes to mental health and parental role and all of those things. And hopefully this has come through to you today. And so I ask you to take the time, sit down, write them out, ask yourself, do an assessment. Are we teaching these values? Are we exhibiting the living out of the values that we have? And if not, then make a plan and make some changes. Sit your child down, talk to them, tell them what you'd like to do differently, what you wish you'd have done, even if you're later in the game. Late is better than never. And encourage you to do that. Thank you for listening today, and I hope what I've shared can be of help to you. Parents, your time is valuable, and I'm grateful you spent some of it with us. What you're intentionally doing in your home life is inspiring and unmatched in its importance and long-term effects. Ask yourself, what am I going to do because of what I've learned today?